Attention.
I like that. Let's go with that.
Is that the opening?
Yep.
Maybe it can be. We're still workshopping. We'll figure it out.
What do we want to talk about first?
Well, I think we said we wanted to
Juneteenth?
talk a little bit Juneteenth.
Yeah. Which part though? So many things.
I don't know. I watched that video that you sent, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
Very powerful. But also, I was like, does that mean that me doing stuff on Juneteenth is like bullshit?
Well, say more. What was the video? I didn't watch the video.
This is Marc Lamont Hill. The title of the YouTube video was Juneteenth is a, what is it?
Like a fraudulent government holiday.
Juneteenth is a fraudulent holiday. Yeah. You talk about it.
Well, he just talks about, like, it's like a lot of the things that, like, I think our government, and I think especially, like white liberalism does, which is, like, give, like, these little, like, symbolic gestures to be like, hey, this is, like, cool.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't this make you feel better, white people? And white people are like, yeah, it does. I feel great now. I get to talk about Juneteenth, and it makes me feel nice. But, like, any substantive repair is, like, much more difficult and means, like, white people and people, like, non-black, just, like, non-black folks, like, have to give something up, like, for reparations or for, like, or, for, like, abolition, like, to not just reform this whole, like, the justice system, but, like, completely, like, break it down and rebuild it. And but what we do is, like, something like Juneteenth, which I think we can carry two truths at the same time, which is, like, Juneteenth is, like, a win and, like, a really joyful thing that, like, I think is really for black folks.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, we can say that, like, what matters is, like, systemic change. And, like, it's like, I think a lot about when all this shit was going down in 2020, and one of, like, the only lasting takeaways from, like, 2020 is that, like, the Cleveland baseball team and the Washington football team, like, changed their names. And, like, I would happily give those names back if, like, we can give indigenous people, like, some of their land back. Like, and, like, but all they got were these names changed. And so I think that's the thing that I was, like, that I think Marc Lamont Hill was talking about, is that he used this phrase, like, substantive repair.
Yeah.
And I think about that phrase a lot in regards to, like, anytime some kind of, like, there's some kind of win racially, economically, like, is this a real thing or is it a symbolic thing?
Yeah. Like performative.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, like, Marc Lamont Hill, one of his, like, main focuses was, like, on reparations.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, that to me is interesting because I was watching this documentary, or not a documentary, this movie, but it's based on this author who wrote a movie about caste systems, or wrote a book about caste systems. God, sorry.
You're fine.
But yeah, like, she basically went to mainly India and Germany to try to understand, like, Nazi Germany and what happened during that time, and India's, like, current caste system that's been in place for, like, thousands of years. And one of the interesting things that happened in Germany was, like, she was talking about how in America there is the Confederate flag and there are statues of Confederate soldiers. And in Germany, they were like, that would never happen. Like, it's illegal to show the swastika, to have the shot. Yeah. And then it's illegal to, or not illegal, but, like, all of their monuments, all of their statues are dedicated to the Jewish people who were lost in the Holocaust. None of them were dedicated to, like, the Nazis, you know? But yeah, it was really fascinating. I watched this yesterday, and, like, First of all, don't watch it because it's sad.
Also, context, because who knows how long it'll take me to edit this, that Juneteenth was yesterday.
Juneteenth was
So,
yesterday.
Just extra context for
so,
everyone.
Yeah, I had the day off yesterday, and I just stayed home, but I did watch this movie called Origin by Ava DuVernay. And yeah, it's about that book. And then I also ordered from a Black-owned business lunch, and it was so delicious. It was so good.
Wait, shout them out. Who was it?
It's called Undergrind Cafe in LA, in like Mid-City. And I had the best sandwich ever, and I had like an Earl Grey latte, and it was freaking amazing. But anyway, yeah, this movie is it follows the author on their journey to kind of discover the ties that bind like the different caste systems throughout the world. And like her argument is that Jim Crow and like enslavement of African Americans is not based necessarily in racism, but it's based in this idea of creating this caste system where one race is superior over another race, you know. And there are different, like in making that the framework, she kind of was able to break down like all the similarities between like it's seemingly different like in India, because the caste system is not based on race in India, but the caste system there, like the caste system of the Jim Crow era, also denied like intermarrying between the higher castes and the lower castes. And the same in Nazi Germany. You know, you couldn't marry a Jewish person if you weren't Jewish over there. And so like that was one of their kind of like ways of controlling things. The number one thing was controlling mating, basically, like controlling intermingling of the castes, and then also controlling their ability to proliferate, you know. And that was just so interesting to me. There's so much more to it, but I really loved how they explored kind of like all of the similarities, but also there were moments or there are characters that pushed back on those similarities and kind of were like, someone when she went to Germany was like, oh, it's not the same thing. And then she went to go research it, and she was like, oh, the Nazis literally looked at slavery and were like, how can we do that in Nazi Germany? So it's fascinating. It was really good, and I cried as well.
Yeah, that's good. I was going to ask you how you felt, but then you just said that at the end. But no, I've read the book.
Oh,
and it is fascinating because I think when you look back to Black Lives Matter movements in 2020 and kind of what that was centered on was very much kind of a moment of people realizing how hard it is to be Black in America. And some people chose to realize that and move for it, probably because they didn't have anything else to do. But, you know, it was nice to see people out and about and feel like having narrative and having people talk about it. But I think the kind of antithesis to that was you see a lot of rising of Blue Lives Matter or All Lives Matter and all that. And I think a lot of that wasn't done with like sincerity at heart. But, you know, I think the idea of that is interesting because it's not to say that other lives don't matter, that someone that is, you know, an immigrant or someone that's LGBTQ or someone that has a disability or, you know, someone that's of a different religion. It's not to say that those aren't important. They are. But at this time, the urgency is speaking about Black lives. And the story is here. And this is what we need to urgently fix currently. It's not to say that others are irrelevant, but like this is what we're talking about right now. And reading the Caste book, I think is interesting is, you know, it kind of puts that into perspective what an a truly intelligent conversation around all lives matter is because there is a caste system, right? Like the white male is at the top, white rich male, and then you have, white working class males, and then you have women, then you have, like, you can start to see where there is an actual ranking order and where people fit on things. And you can say, yes, like, even though someone is not at the top, there is an issue with how we treat women in this world and how it is a men-dominated society. And that is important. It is part of that caste system. There is a hierarchy that exists, and it's not publicly known or like part of society where like there's explicit laws around that. There used to be around women can't vote, minorities can't vote, black people were 3/5 of a person kind of thing. Like there's those things used to exist in the laws, but it still exists in the society of how we operate today. So I thought that was something when I was reading that book that I was like, okay, this is an interesting way. I hadn't heard that perspective or like thought about it that way. It's like, okay, like this is how you can actually say like there is validity to the idea of all lives matter, and that there is an equity across the entire population that is the United States and the diversity that we make up. And so I think that for me, that was interesting to kind of shine light on that and kind of give it a language that you can actually have a structured conversation around versus just, well, all lives matter. Why are we just talking about black lives as like a you don't care about me sentiment, or trying to be an anti-protester, if you will.
Yeah. I think also the goal of the author of like putting it in the framework of a caste system was to like eliminate the gray areas of like something being called racist, or like I don't know, like the argument I half agree with, half don't, because like people are racist, but she also says that, but she also says like racism or calling someone racist is like an emotionally fueled term, and there's no consensus on what racism actually is, and so that kind of like stops the conversation before it even begins. But but I don't know, I do feel like that kind of I don't know, people on the right, like they love to talk about how racism doesn't exist, and so I kind of worry about like that point of view, because racism does exist. Like the racism that is perpetuated upon black people is a very specific type of racism, and it's not the same as people experienced in Germany and people experienced in India. Like it's very specific and very deliberate. But I really liked the way that made me think about things. The book is called Caste: The Origins of Our Discontent. So, and then the movie that I watched is called Origin. So
I'm sorry for our Florida viewers. You probably can't find that at your local schools or libraries.
Yeah,
that's so true.
That was the other thing. They were like burning books. Another way that we control and, make our caste system stronger. And yeah. And then there's like a whole scene where they do that in Nazi Germany. And then I was like, oh, people did that like last week in Florida.
Yeah.
Yikes.
What was that required reading we had? Did you guys read Fahrenheit 451? So
yeah.
Ray Bradbury, I think, the author of that one. Very much like the whole idea is around, indoctrination and, limiting the amount of knowledge and who has it. And like they have a whole like kind of police system that is specifically around not allowing people to read and have other thoughts outside of state approved books. It's like that was required reading. Like, did we forget that?
It used to be. I don't know if it's required reading now.
I was gonna say it was not for me, but I don't know if that was like a where I was situation or
Yeah.
Actually, I think I read it separate. I went to Catholic school, so I probably read it separately.
Yeah.
We know what your required reading is.
The Bible front to
Mark
back.
chapter 1.
Literally.
Tim, I did want to mention, you kind of started talking a little bit about kind of the video you saw and how, Juneteenth is kind of the holiday that, it was not the win that we should have gotten.
Yeah.
And, that is, as someone that was actively protesting and leading groups, like back when I was in Columbus, Ohio, it was interesting to see, like, all we got out of it was a federal holiday, and the policing bill is still sitting there, not going anywhere. You haven't seen any meaningful like reforms or changes. In fact, now you're seeing at a state by state level things going backwards. It is tough to see that, and then even the reverence that you see on a Juneteenth, it's like, oh, yep, I just got another day off. Like, there's not people aren't doing the work like Jenny just did, like, why is that the day off? Not that everybody's, going to the Veterans Memorial on Veterans Day or anything, but
veterans are getting, like, some kind of, like, government, not assistance, but there's, like, government supports that come with being a veteran, that there's no equated thing that comes along with, like, getting Juneteenth. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because reparations is such a heated topic. I'm going to shout out someone near and dear to my heart who has passed. But it's my Uncle Benjamin Gaines. He was actually the first person to receive reparations in Evanston, Illinois. As a city, they actually did that because there was a significant redlining that was happening. Back in, I think it was like the 40s or 50s or so. So they were like actively denying like homes and like actually funding and stuff. And so the state actually the county, Evanston, went back and actually then paid out reparations. Not a lot, but some to those. And he was one of the first. Actually, he's part of like the Pullman Porter story that's on Netflix and everything. He has an incredible story in life, like an incredible human being. But he passed away last December at over 100. So pretty interesting. But or not, it was not October. It was a year ago in April. His birthday was in December, his 100th birthday. But it's interesting, right? Like even just it's like maybe like $20,000 to $30,000, but like certainly not the value that a home would have had at the time. And like, I mean, he's lived in that same home that he ended up buying until he passed away. Like, so there's significant value that was missed out by, how he was treated and stuff. But it was interesting that, even that it's something, and to clearly show like, hey, we did a systemic wrong and now we're doing a thing to right it. And it's unfortunate there's not more stories like that. Now, if you gave, every black person, $5 million, like that's not realistic, right? Like how are you going to fund that? How are you going to do that's not going to be the answer. But how do you acknowledge like our parents' generation where it was hard to get, like, banks actively did not give loans to black applicants, and so you missed out on where the home values were so low, or like you could actually afford a down payment as a part of your salary, and actively getting people in the home, the GI Bill, and trying to like stimulate the economy and get people in the house and build up suburbia. There's whole like communities of people that did not get to participate in one of the biggest acquisition of wealths that this country has seen. And how do you begin to bridge the gap? Or something as simple as, how do we make policing safer? Like, these are things that you can actively do to make things better, but all we got was June 19th as a day off for some people. Like, it's not like every company takes it off.
Not
right?
working class black folks for the most part, I bet.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like Memorial Day where like everybody's off except for like maybe a couple hourly folks, but like
It's funny. I was thinking about like we're literally, not to give away our location too much, but like
Do not come here and murder me.
we're really close to Bruce's Beach.
Okay.
And
We're fine.
I was just thinking about that.
and like, and that's one of like very similar to like what you're talking about, where like this plot of land, this like highly valued plot of like beach land was like, I don't remember all the details of it, but like was taken away from a black family on false pretenses, and then like just recently, like in the last couple of years, was after like years and years of like court cases, was given back to the family. And I was thinking about that, like, right, like when we talk about like restorative justice, like when a hurt is caused, like the first step has to be like acknowledging that the hurt was caused. But then the second, like, and first of all, we won't even do that in the United States. And then the second step is going like asking the person who was hurt, like, what can I do to heal this pain that I caused you? Like, if I were to do something to hurt your feelings, Maddie, like, maybe,
I'm the worst example you could
and
use.
maybe I have, but like the first thing is being like, hey, like, I know I did something shitty to like hurt your feelings, and I'm really sorry. Now, what can I do to make you feel comfortable, and maybe not even with the understanding that like this relationship might get to the same place it was before, but like, what can I do to make you feel comfortable, or to feel like the pain that I caused is healed, with no understanding that the relationship between us would go back to being the same, but like just with the fact that like, or just with the intention that I want to heal the pain that I caused you.
Or even just admitting that you did a wrong.
Yeah.
And apologizing to begin with. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, part of that story is just, people are actively trying to say, it wasn't that bad. Look how far we've come.
Yeah.
That was a thing. Like, it wasn't me. It was like people long ago. So like, it didn't directly affect you. So why are you worried about it? Like you can't deny, to your analogy, like to not even say sorry to begin with. Exactly. Let alone do actual like healing of that. Just even that act of apologizing itself isn't happening.
Yeah.
And actively being denied and rewritten to the point where a governor will say, well, you should be so lucky because you got trade skills out of it.
Yeah.
Is that an American thing? Like not saying sorry?
Well, I think
maybe
there's a like Bryan Stevenson, the guy who wrote Just Mercy, talks about this a lot.
Oh,
like,
I love Just Mercy. I watched the movie.
The book is like one of my favorite books of all time.
So good.
And something that he talks about in the book, and like talks about in general, is like this idea of like storytelling of self. And like one of the stories we tell about ourselves in the United States is that like we're a country of freedom, and we're a country of rights, and we're a country of equality, and so the actual story of America like collides with that. And so to acknowledge the truth of our country is to also acknowledge that like we have not lived up to like our ideals. And so he talks a little bit about like apartheid in South Africa and like what happened there. And they had like the Truth and Reconciliation panels or whatever, which were literally acknowledging the pain that was caused in apartheid, and then moving to like figure out like how to restore whatever effects were caused by apartheid. And like, I literally don't think that's possible in our country, and it's because that would force us to reckon with a narrative that does not align with what we tell ourselves about a country. And that's not just Republicans. Like, that's people from all sides, what they tell themselves about how they like view the world, and like how they see themselves, and like how racist or not racist they say they are, or how much they're willing to like, fight for change, and how much they're not. Like, it's a story that we kind of all tell ourselves, and like it forces us to kind of like reckon with like the truth of whether or not like we're actually aligning with our beliefs about ourselves.
Yeah. That's why I asked if it was an American thing, because I do think that it's like a universal thing and not necessarily a Republican or Democrat feeling or way of looking at things.
I mean, maybe it's one of the many flaws of American exceptionalism, of this idea that we're right, we're the best, we're the leading example in the world. And if you start to tarnish that image that is portrayed and clearly conveyed and supported in all of our teachings and histories of, like, you know, how great America was in its positions in the political the world theater, if you will, to then like chip away at that and say, well, it wasn't really founded on good pretexts, and maybe the founding fathers weren't the best people of how they were setting up, and, you know, the Constitution was set up to make them feel, I mean, really, I mean, at the end of the day, America was founded because people didn't want to pay taxes. That's they didn't like, so you're skipping taxes, which probably, you know, is a nice commentary on the tax system that we have today and how a lot of wealthy people don't pay all their taxes. Anyway, but like, and then you had a working class that essentially built America as we know it in terms of, you know, our greatest exports, which was cotton, and like that was a business decision, and you needed cheap labor in order to have good margins and build the U.S. economy. As soon as you start like chipping away at that, or, you know, we go and, you know, to the wars internationally and say, you know, we're protecting democracy and the freedoms and making sure the world is free. It's like, well, are we that great to be shouting from the pedestal? Like, I don't know. So maybe that, to your point of, is it American thing? I think probably certainly has some validity there in terms of the exceptionalism that we as Americans, certainly there's spectrums of people who embody that and not, but like as a whole, what Americans and how we show up in the world.
You know what's a funny thing that I learned today? So when you think of an eagle and the sound that an eagle makes, what's the sound? Someone do it.
Nice. That was good.
I can't wait to edit that.
You knew I was going to be the one who did it.
I feel like they don't actually make
with
sound
the loud
that
piercing
much.
screech.
I actually don't know.
I feel like that's what we're all told, but I feel like they don't actually make sound that much.
That's what I learned today. I learned this
I
at
don't
work.
think I've ever seen them make a sound.
That's the sound that hawks make, not what you did,
Yeah.
but like,
Yeah, yours was horrible.
that very, you know, strong caw sound, where you think that everyone associates that with an eagle, but in reality they make a similar sound to a seagull, which is like the most annoying sound
Mine.
in the world. And I was just like, that's so American.
Accurate, yeah.
That's so yeah. It's like everybody has this idea of this noble bird, but in reality it's not that great.
Well,
Damn. Did you hear that, all you eagles out there?
Sorry, eagles.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think the stories we tell about ourselves are very powerful, and they're hard to, like, when something like bumps up against that, and like on an individual basis, like how many times has like you were certain of a thing, and then something like contradicted that narrative, and you're like, oh wait, like, but what you're saying doesn't align with what I think about myself. Like it takes a second to like not. So let me give you an example, like a concrete example. Like I was beaming last night about the Kendrick Lamar concert, like beaming. Like I thought it was, and I still do. Like I think it was fucking amazing what he did. Like I thought, you know, I think this idea of like bringing together all these like competing, like honestly gangs, like competing gangs, like bringing all these black folks together on a stage, like and especially like rarely listen to Los Angeles artists at a time when like gentrification is at its peak, and to say like this land is like black land, at a time like when I feel like I go to like El Sereno where I grew up, and like slowly it's starting to get gentrified, even though it's like pretty inland, and like you're like, oh, they're not gonna get to us, they're getting to us.
Yeah, and same in Inglewood where the concert was at.
Exactly. And so like there's this, I watched it like beaming about like all these narratives, and then I woke up this morning and I was like thumbing through my Instagram page, and this writer who I adore and who I generally like align with, Hanif Abdurraqib, posted about like, he's like, I'm not fucking with this, because this dude brought out Dr. Dre to introduce Not Like Us, and Dr. Dre has done legitimately horrid things to women. And so like he's singing this song about like, you know, calling out Drake for like doing horrid things to women. Meanwhile, he's bringing on this dude, Dr. Dre, who has like himself done horrid things to women. So like at this point, you are just like taking shots that don't have any depth to it. You're just trying to win points. And like my initial reaction was just like, man, fuck that. Like my initial reaction was just like, no, I'm like, it was so fucking cool. But like, because it didn't align with the narrative I tell about myself about being like down for a certain cause and like down for certain types of things. But the more I've thought about it, and the more like I've let it sit with myself, and like the more like I thought about like that defensiveness that I felt in the moment, like my instinct is to like question that defensiveness and like question that like, oh wait, why did that make me feel bad that he said that thing? It's because like there's some truth to it. Like, because I feel that way about Chris Brown, I feel that way about Diddy, I feel that way about Kanye. Like there's all these people who I do feel that way about, but then he brought up this person who I'm like, oh, but I don't feel that way about him yet. And he brought up a truth that like made complex something that I thought was simple.
Yeah.
And conflicted with like an idea that I have of myself that like maybe isn't fully like, isn't as like, the moral compass isn't as like aligned as I want it to be. And I think that's fucking, that like, I think we all have those moments, and I think different people to different extents are willing to be like, why am I feeling this discomfort? Why am I feeling this defensiveness? But I think like that's where interesting shit happens, and like that's where growth happens.
That is interesting, because when you speak of it on race, that's a lot of where white fragility in that term comes into play. But I think we all inherently have fragility in the sense that, and I've said this, and when I get on my soapbox, is, you know, and maybe I'm just getting older, but like the idea of having a conversation, I feel like a lot of the conversations people have is in order to be right, and to make sure that, you know, the point is you have to now see things my way in the conversation, versus being open to a differing point of view. Or even like one of the great things of why like I like this podcast and what we're doing is it's okay to not know everything about everything. It's okay to have a differing point of view come in, not be 100% knowledgeable, and have maybe an understanding or a truth change or evolve. And you're having conversation for the fact of conversation and having empathy on the different perspectives that people can provide. And just because it's something that's different, and I'm as someone that also likes to be right, I like it is hard when you're like, whoa, like I thought I knew this, now like this is a weird change, like maybe this does like change the perspective, but then you're also like stressing like, well, I put this person on a pedestal, I really like this person, but oh my gosh, like now what? Like I think about that like with Dave Chappelle. I went and saw him in stand up when they did the Netflix The Joke Festival 2 years, or was that 2 years ago? 2 years ago. And like loved Chappelle's show growing up, thought it was great, thought it was pushing boundaries, and like going to that show, like I honestly was thinking about getting up and leaving. Like it was so bad, it was childish. He was like blatantly ignoring the comments that he was making on like trans folks and just saying like, fuck them, like I don't care, I had my one friend, and so this is like what I'm gonna say. And it's like, and then even some of the jokes he was making were so childish, and like it, as someone that like I have like Chappelle's show on DVD, like we don't watch DVDs anymore. I just stream it somewhere. But now I'm like, oh, like it challenged my understanding, and that wasn't someone telling me, that was me experiencing that. And it's like, holy, like I put this person on a pedestal, and now my understanding of what I thought was like so great, what I knew, quote Chappelle, like all that kind of stuff, like now I'm like, I do not like this. I can't stand in that same vein, and it's hard, but we need to do that. Yeah. It needs to be okay to do that. You need to have a safe space where you have a conversation with a differing opinion, and it's not I need you to see that I'm right, or I can't accept your opinion because this is my understanding and I don't want to be wrong. How do we be better as humans in a society where it's okay to have conversations, to challenge, to evolve, to have understandings, and it's okay to leave the conversation saying, well, I don't totally agree with what you said, but I hear you. I understand where you're coming from. Like that, to your point, the duality can exist, and that's okay to be in that gray area. But I think that is a fundamental challenge that I see in so many venues, for sure. But we got Juneteenth as a
it was so
holiday.
Nice.
Yeah, Marc Lamont Hill talked about like, I something he said was around like, maybe this was a holiday that was better off like letting black folks do their thing, and like maybe we shouldn't be involved in it. You know what I mean? That type of thing where it's just like, this was like something that black folks have been celebrating and doing like their own traditions with for years and years and years. And now it's kind of like, now we get the Target version. Now we get the fucking shirts. And like, now we get the like yeah. I don't know, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I do think it's good to have it.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's not a win. I think it, when you look at some of the other days we celebrate as like federal holidays and stuff, right? Like you have Labor Day, you have Memorial Day, President's Day, like all of these are monuments to either like elements of our industry or like of our country, or like historical significance, right? Like July 4th, like when the country was declared independence, right? So to put something like Juneteenth on the level of a federal holiday, like even where like stock markets are closed, I think that goes a way of acknowledging, like, well, if you made it a federal holiday, that means that there's some meaning behind this that is important, and we're saying is important. So I do think it's good to recognize that at a national level. And yeah, I mean, listen, like black people still do their thing, and celebrate the way they want to celebrate. Like it's just that'll always exist, right? But I do think it's good that when you look at some of the other holidays, to actually have something like when like the day when they were freed, in the last, like in Texas when they actually became free, the last like group of slaves, like that truly, it's not the emancipation like it is like Juneteenth is the last one. I think it is good to recognize, if you're like, in a world where history is going away or being revised, to have that be a federal holiday. It kind of goes to acknowledging that there was a wrong, and there was a group, while in 1776 America was free, not all of America was free. There's maybe the rest of America, you could almost say the rest of America was free on Juneteenth. Now it doesn't go far enough, no, to be clear.
Yeah.
But I do think I do like to consider that a win. But I don't speak on behalf of all black people. But personally, I do think it's a good thing that does exist now as a federal holiday.
Yeah.
You know why I love my birthday?
Making it about himself all the
Transition.
time. Just kidding.
Okay.
I love my birthday because it's like it's the one day where it's like acceptable. I always want to do this, but it's the one day when it's acceptable to like do the thing that I want to do. But the reason I say all this is like, this is a bit radical, but like maybe on fucking Juneteenth, like maybe we just fucking have to stay inside and like let black folks do whatever the fuck. Like that's what I think I got out of like Kendrick's thing, is like I looked at that stage and I'm like, this is just a bunch of fucking beautiful black folks just together fucking, and Kendrick gets to do whatever he wants. He's fucking dissing Drake. He's like talking, he's playing Not Like Us 5 times. Like there's Crips, there's Bloods, fucking Russell Westbrook of the Los Angeles Clippers and DeMar DeRozan of the Chicago Bulls, all on this stage just fucking going at it, having a party, and none of us are involved. And like, obviously there's people in the audience, but like, we're not there. Like, we're not invited, and like, I don't want to be invited. Like, this is your fucking day. Do what you want.
Center stage.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what the holidays you do, like with veterans, right? Like, you know, it's very much, you know, thank you for the service. Let's do flyovers. We'll have a special service for this. And same with Memorial Day, right? Like, it you know, all those different holidays are very much specifically kind of catering to, like, those groups. And so I think part of that is, like, yes, let's celebrate that. But then it's kind of nice to be like, yeah, like, make sure that everybody else recognize that as well and celebrate for the right reasons, or, you know, like, have that perspective, because it's like to hide and sit inside, and then it becomes like, well, is this like the purge or something? Like, what are we about to start over here? But it's like the center stage is kind of the history that is specifically unique to the Black American experience. But then where I think we go back to that Sorry conversation and stuff earlier, if the rest of the nation is also acknowledging that and recognizing that, like, that is what we're celebrating today, like, it is that, like, that is the centerpiece of the day. Like, it is here's the parade, or here is the honoring local. Like, let's make sure, you know, if you're someone did something special in your city, maybe that might be the day to give them the key to the city, or like have like remembrance things happening that like the community can gather, but it is the Black people at the center, kind of like the Kendrick concert, where it is this is the centerpiece, and then everybody else can enjoy and partake and have all the memes and everything afterwards, which is hilarious. Drake, did you cancel your Amazon subscription after this? I don't know. But yeah, no, I think that's that's what I would love to see is both, like, yes, the center stage, the main event is Black people and what that means. But then the viewers and the participants and who is like watching it is respected at the national level. That would be my dream.
I love that.
Wouldn't it be wild if Drake listened to this podcast?
Spoiler alert, definitely not happening.
Well, you know.
Well, you address Drake directly.
Well, Drake, what can you do for me? You know, we're looking for sponsors. You know, we're looking for, you know, but, you know.
Yeah, he might need to advertise on a podcast soon.
I don't want to be associated with that man.
No, I mean, if we're going to be a podcast that talks about the culture, I think the more representative sample is Kendrick on this side.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think that was part of his statement of his concert of, you know, you're gonna try to diss me and say like you're rapping like you're trying to free the slaves. Let me show you how in tuned I am with the culture that you claim to partake and be an artist in. I'm selling out an arena on Juneteenth, bringing people together. Everybody's talking about it. And it was not a planned concert. It was thrown together last minute. This wasn't a tour. This was an event and did well. It you know, people were rehearsing. It was well attended. Everybody loved it. Like that shows, like, you know, who really truly has a better pulse on the culture.
And like a couple weeks ago, he went to the Compton Community College graduation and like congratulated everyone. He gave a speech, which like was nice. Mm-hmm. He's not just like throwing the concert, you know, he's like out and with the people.
Not on a boat in Mykonos.
Where is Mykonos? I don't even know.
It's one of the Greek islands.
I was going to say it's in Greece, right?
Greek.
Nice.
Nice.
Right. Scene.
And scene.